All right, guys, we are back with round 4 of the. I'm Matthew Jackson. I'm joined here by Franklin Lewis. Say hi, Franklin.
Hello, everybody.
We have for the last round of Swiss, so this is more than likely the win and in game to top cut. We have Leonard Craft, known as DaWoblefet, top 8 U.S. Nationals 2016, very well established player, versus Phillip Barragan, the junior who recently emerged to seniors, who top cut Worlds, got top 16, got second at U.S. Internats. He's a phenomenal player. Looks like those names aren't correct. Leonard will be on their bottom screen versus Phillip Barragan.
So one thing to keep in mind is that while on the surface it might appear that it's an absolute mismatch, I do want to assure everybody that Phillip is a pretty good player. Like, he's a young kid, but he will give people a run for their money if they're not respecting him as a player. And we can see here that Phillip has a pretty trick room of using Keen. Somebody that can take advantage of that. He's got the Araquanid, he's got the Kartana, he's got the Porygon 2, Arcanine, Mudsdale, and Tapu Koko. And we see that Leonard has Tapu Bulu, Marowak, Nihilego, Persian, Celesteela, and Gyarados.
It's a very interesting team by Leonard. Phillip has more pretty standard team. I believe this was the team that he got second in juniors at U.S. Nationals with. I believe he probably used this at Worlds as well. He definitely knows. He locked in his team within like 7 seconds, so he's very comfortable, I guess, with this matchup.
Yeah, and one thing that we can glean from this is that if Leonard's bringing Tapu Bulu, he has to be aware that Kartana is going to be powered up by that. Leonard doesn't really seem to have any outright struggles with Kartana, except that Bulu, I guess half of his team might, because we've got Bulu that doesn't really take Smart Strikes too terribly well. We've got the Leaf Blades that are boosted by Grassy Terrain. Gyarados isn't going to be very happy about that. And then Nihilego, with such low defenses, if it switches into any sort of physical attack, it's going to be kind of lights out for that.
Absolutely, and so we do very.
Matt, Koko. It sounds like you're cutting out a little bit there. So let me introduce the Pokemon that are out here. We do have our Persian coming out, and we've got our shiny Gyarados, a shiny Tapu Koko from Phillip's side, and the Arcanine, the only non-shiny on the field. Kind of interesting to note that because we've got a shiny Gyarados, there is potential for bounce, so we have to worry about that. Tapu Koko and Arcanine, a fairly safe lead out here, preventing a huge amount of damage out of this Gyarados with that Intimidate. And then Tapu Koko really putting the pressure on this Gyarados because we've got the Electric Terrain and Electric moves that are going to be 4 times super effective against this Gyarados.
Am I back? Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Sounds Perfect. Much better.
All right. So we do see a very safe play of the Koko going for Protect here. The Persian going for the Fake Out onto the Tapu Koko. As Arcanine goes for the extreme speed. I wonder if the Gyarados went for the Dragon Dance, and that is what we do see here, boosting its attack and speed by 1 stage, is going back to neutral.
Yeah, so now we've got a fairly fast Gyarados, again at that neutral attack as Matt mentioned, but Tapu Koko opting, that was, sorry, I was zoned out a little bit trying to help out with the microphone stuff. I assumed that was no fake outs, so, man, where are we at here? No damage on that Tapu Koko, no damage on the Arcanine, but a pretty free Dragon Dance for Gyarados just to increase that speed. So the helping hand here from Arcanine. Oh no!
Leonard going for the Hydro Vortex here. If that hits that Koko slot, that's going to be a phenomenal turn for Leonard.
Leonard just playing this extremely well, making sure that he's got pretty much everything covered. That Hydro Vortex does indeed go into our shiny Tapu Koko, and clears it out in one shot, nullifying any advantage that Helping Hand was going to give.
And the person just safely parting shots, kind of saying goodbye for now. And Leonard will make a switch into the Pokemon of his choosing in the back.
Yeah, and so if we go back to what Leonard brought, he's got the ability to change terrain here. He's also got the option to switch into maybe a Nihilego. So for anybody not aware, we do get to see nicknames now in tournament matchups again. And for anybody truly not aware, that I go by the moniker Avos5, and Leonard has nicknamed this knowing that I would do commentary, assuming that he may once get on stream so that I could witness the not Avos5 Tapu Bulu. And Phillip going to go ahead and try and take advantage of the terrain. Maybe he predicted that Bulu had a chance of coming in here, and he's going to take advantage of that grassy terrain, boosting his grass moves on that Kartana.
We see the Helping Hand from the Arcanine here. That was a very smart switch by switch into Phillip here, as he's just gonna deal a ton of damage with the grassy terrain boost, like as that just cleanly kills the Gyarados there. We do see the Bulu. If it we know that most Bulu use grass moves, but it reveals the superpower that should be able to pick up the KO on that Kartana.
Oh,
beautiful
man.
trade by Leonard.
That's a great superpower from that Tapu Bulu. And then Leonard, I mean, pretty bravely keeping this Bulu out here up against this Arcanine. Phillip is choosing to use that Helping Hand instead of fire moves. But I mean, that could have been a completely different turn if we'd seen Phillip maybe not predicting a Protect out of this Bulu, but trying to double it or get a double down here. Having a Flare Blitz into Tapu Bulu and then that Leaf Blade maybe being able to pick up the Gyarados as well. That could have been completely different.
We do see the Marowak come on in. The cat going for the fake out onto the Araquanid. Pretty safe play as the Arcanine goes for the Flare Blitz, most likely in that Bulu slot, so good switch by Leonard as to not take a lot of damage. And he'll probably just heal that up with the grassy terrain.
Indeed. And, you know, having Araquanid out here does seem extremely beneficial for Phillip, just because you've got that water bubble boosted water moves against our friend Marowak here. But I mean, again, we still have switch potential out of Leonard, who might be playing into a kind of a little bit of a mind game. Again, we're playing Pokemon, which is based on information, and if Leonard is trying to hide things from Phillip for games 2 and 3, switching in to try and move things around might be what he's going for.
And that Marowak switch in definitely.
Well, it sounds like Matt is cutting out again here. So it looks like, excuse me, it looks like Phillip is going to go ahead and protect that Arcanine. We've got a foul play going into Araquanid, doing a pretty good chunk of damage. Looks like a little bit over 30%. And then just a Shadow Bone straight into the Araquanid. A great double on a protect on that Arcanine. So nothing done for Phillip, and then Leonard just goes ahead and takes a nice KO. So now we've got Phillip over here with Arcanine against the world. We've seen Shadow Bone from Marowak. We've seen now Parting Shot and Foul Play out of Persian. And it looks like Leonard is going to switch back into Bulu. The only option that he's got, because we've seen one knockout, and it's his only other Pokemon left. So we've got not Avos5 coming back out here. And then it looks like another Shadow Bone, just to try and do as much damage to this Arcanine as possible. And that looks like it's going to be a 2-hit KO, potentially.
Yeah, that looks like it's game 1 for Leonard. As just very smartly played, as he didn't really reveal a whole lot about his team either, except for the superpower on the Bulu. Everything else seemed pretty standard.
Yeah, and I mean, we're seeing the superpower again from this Tapu Bulu, not wanting to reveal any more moves than he has to. Leonard definitely playing this as a best of 3, and even potentially trying to prevent anybody from picking up any extra information from the stream either.
So, if you're Phillip here, what do you have to do to adjust to the matchup?
I'm a little disappointed that we didn't see Trick Room come out from Phillip. If he brings out Trick Room, Leonard's team is largely very fast. We've got Celesteela and Marowak, which are the slowest Pokemon on his team, but Marowak under Trick Room suffers from not wanting to deal with that Mudsdale, or even our Araquanid. Honestly, if we see Trick Room out of Phillip, that could be a huge shift of momentum in Phillip's favor.
Absolutely, the Araquanid just deals so much offensive pressure with the... If it's the Hydro Vortex, it can potentially KO like 3 or 4 of the Mons on Leonard's side of the battlefield.
Yeah, and we've seen Celesteela earlier in the day with their extreme bulk, but the nice thing about a lot of these slow Pokemon on Phillip's side is that they've got so much offensive potential. Like we said with the Water Bubble on Araquanid, that boosts water moves pretty dramatically, and that can be fantastic, especially if you pair that with the helping hand of Arcanine. You're just getting so much offensive potential under Trick Room. And it does look like our leadouts are shown here. We've got Gyarados and Persian again, and then we've got an Arcanine and Tapu Koko again from Phillip. So not a whole lot of adjustment here. How do you feel about that, Matt?
Maybe, Leonard, I think, has a pretty safe turn again. The Arcanine went for the Helping Hand, which means that it probably is more of a support set, and it won't have something like the Wild Charge. So Gyarados is almost free to get a free Dragon Dance this turn.
Yeah, and if we do see potentially Wild Charge, that's a risk that Leonard may or may not be willing to take, but he does have potential Fake Out with this Persian, and it just depends on where he wants to go. And we saw that in Game 1, Phillip wanted to play a little bit more safe, a little bit more conservative, and it looks like Tapu Koko going for a Protect. That might be exactly what he wants to do again.
We do see the Persian go for the Fake Out, and Gyarados set up that Dragon Dance. So we're going to have to see what this Arcanine is going to do this turn. And
there's the Flare Blitz. At -1, because we've got the Intimidate that came out from Gyarados. And then the increased defense of Persian with the Fur Coat ability. Not really doing a whole lot. So again, this is a turn 1 for Phillip where he wasn't able to really capitalize on some of his offensive pressure.
Absolutely, and Phillip switching out the Koko, very smart to try to take that Hydro. And as you see the Araquanid come in, and the Persian switching out and going into the Marowak.
So now Marowak out here, again, we're at a position where Marowak against an Araquanid, maybe not so great. And as we mentioned at preview, we've got a Dragon Dancing Gyarados, which is shiny, which does potentially mean that this could be one of those bounce Gyarados. Araquanid could be in a lot of trouble here.
Leonard revealed the Waternium in the Game 1 when he KO'd the Koko.
And so we've got Arcanine facing off against this Gyarados, and thank you for reminding me about that Waterium Z. So that does mean that it's not going to be that Flyinium Z, so probably not Bounce, you are correct. Because at that point, if we've got a Bounce into that Araquanid, he's just going to be able to protect turn 2, right?
Absolutely. Leonard playing that turn very safe, predicting that the Koko probably wasn't going to attack, but if he did, he'd have the free switch into Marowak that turn. Mm-hmm. So I really like that play. It was a very, it was just incredibly safe. Mm-hmm. And he gets another Dragon Dance, and to save that Waternium for the late game.
And we do see that Arcanine's going for that extreme speed, trying to get a little bit of damage in on this Gyarados. Doesn't do a whole lot because Arcanine is at -1. But then we've got that Waterium Z coming out of this Araquanid, presumably trying to do as much damage as possible while it still has a chance to do something here.
We do see the Hydro Vortex onto that Gyarados. That's going to do a decent chunk of damage, even though it resists because of the Water Bubble, and it actually picks up the knockout.
Yeah, so Gyarados was able to get the Intimidate off on the Tapu Koko that turn 1, and it got it off on the Arcanine turn 1. But Phillip playing pretty smart here, bringing in Araquanid after the Intimidates were set up, and so that's a full-powered Hydro Vortex, boosted by the Water Bubble. And then we see Tapu Bulu and Tapu Koko trying to fight for which terrain is going to be here, and Tapu Bulu, being the slower Pokemon, has the advantage on that has advantage on bringing up that grassy terrain.
And that, with the Marowak in the back, that definitely restricts what this Tapu Koko can do. The Tapu Bulu has the terrain control, so Araquanid and Koko both don't really want to be taking Horn Leeches right now.
Yeah, the Tapu Koko is going to have a speed advantage, but Persian's going to be able to do basically whatever it wants. It can go for the foul play, as we saw in the last game against that Araquanid, try and do a decent chunk of damage. It can also go for parting shots to reduce any damage output from anybody else. Araquanid playing a little bit safe here, trying to go for the Protect, and a Fake Out, going to that Mudsdale, increasing its defense.
It's a very smart play by Phillip, but Leonard kind of that, like, turn 1. Good play, as now that's just going to be doing the same amount of damage.
Yeah, so that bulk up, and then we've got the grassy terrain here. Phillip trying to preserve as much as he can. Now he's got the potential to switch Koko back in, eliminate the boost of that grassy terrain, but that bulk up increasing both the defense and the attack of Tapu Bulu. Up against two physical attackers, probably not going to take too much damage here.
Not at all. That foul play is going to be going off here onto the Araquanid, doing a decent chunk of damage. We do see the Horn Leech go off onto the Araquanid as well.
Wow, what a great amount of damage out of that Bulu. With that +1 from the bulk up, boosting his attack one stage. With the boost from the grassy terrain, we can see that picked up a great knockout.
And now that brings the count to 3-2 in Leonard's favor.
And so now the last Pokemon that Phillip has is this Tapu Koko, which is going to reset the terrain. At this position, Phillip may or may not actually be able to maintain terrain control. Because Leonard still has that third Pokemon in the back, he can always switch back out and then bring Bulu back in later. But we saw a huge amount of damage from that Mudsdale. Even with the +1 defense, that Bulu took a ton of damage.
Absolutely. I feel like if you're Leonard, you need to... as the Bulu will be the way to win this game, because once the Marowak comes back in, Mudsdale really doesn't like taking... Marowak really doesn't like taking high horsepower.
And it looks like Leonard is going to bring in our Marowak. Just in case there was an electric move coming out here into the Persian, that's a great choice for Leonard. Bringing in Marowak to absorb anything with that beautiful Lightning Rod ability that Marowak has, and a very strong Horn Leech into Mudsdale. It's going to raise the defense of that Mudsdale one more stage because of that stamina ability, but that Heavy Slam coming back out and going to do well over half. A critical hit, picking up nearly a one-hit KO.
And that was everything that Phillip needed to bring the matchup back in his favor. You saw how much Heavy Slam did that turn before. It would have probably brought Bulu down to the mid-yellow and be able to live another hit. But we need to see what's going to be important here is if the Mudsdale can live the attack from the Marowak at +2 stages.
Yeah, we've got +2 defense on this horse, and it just... we've got Fake Out pressure from Persian, which is going to be able to hit either Tapu Koko or the Mudsdale. And so Mudsdale basically has to be able to survive the fake out and whatever damage, or some tricky plays here from Phillip. Phillip's at a little bit of a disadvantage here, but he still has a chance.
Absolutely, it's all dependent on how much this Marowak will do. The Marowak is going to the Flare Blitz. We have to assume it's the Mudsdale slot, and let's see if it's enough for the KO. And it does pick up the knockout.
So that is an absolutely strong Flare Blitz out of this Marowak, which is not unexpected. Marowak with often carrying that thick club, which doubles its attack stat. Tapu Koko trying to go for that double protect, trying to prevent any sort of fake out damage here. No protect out of Mudsdale, which might indicate that there might have been something preventing that.
It could have been an item like the Assault Vest or something. That would have been a very strong possibility. And now Marowak will be going for an attack. This should wrap up the game, because I don't believe that Koko can pull this back.
Yeah, with a resistance of the fire types to fairy moves, Dazzling Gleam is going to take quite a few shots, and that super strong Flare Blitz from Marowak cleaning out that Tapu Koko. And now we've got Leonard at 3-1, with a pretty good chance to go into top cut.
Yeah, beautifully executed by Leonard. He took control. He knew how important Bulu was going to be in that matchup, and just with the Pokemon that, once he got rid of that Arcanine in Game 2, the Bulu just kind of exerted so much pressure, being able to deal 75% to anything on Phillip's team. And it's no wonder. Leonard's a very strong player. He's been playing a VGC for years, and it clearly showed just how well he understands the game and board position.
Yeah, and I was really surprised to see Leonard's adjustment at the end game there, because he obviously saw that Persian fake out was what was going to win him the game, and not necessarily the Bulu terrain control. So he brought out Marowak, preserving the Persian, knowing that Persian was going to be able to get the fake out, and Marowak would be able to survive the one-on-one against Tapu Koko. That was a great endgame positioning for Leonard.
And I believe that wraps up Swiss. We will be back in a little bit for Top Cut. So stick around.